Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the new Evangelicals podcast. I have on this episode Janice, who runs the Instagram account Godhasnotgiven. Now, Janice actually used to be a part of Hillsong New York City and worked with Lentz directly. Now, not so much. So we talked a lot about her time at Hillsong. We talked about the culture of Hillsong. We talked about her time with Carl and what led really to her deconstruction of Christianity in a lot of ways, and also, of course, of the church. So this is a really personal episode, I think, for Janice. I really appreciated her coming on. Her content is great. She does really funny videos, and she's just a great human. So I had a great time bringing her on the episode, and I hope that oh gosh, I'm tired. I had a great time bringing her on the podcast on this episode. That should be the actual wording. So I hope that you enjoy this episode of the podcast. There we go. That being said, as always, thank you to everyone who supports the podcast, who donates to make all this happen. If you want to donate, you can click on the link in our show notes. It goes directly to helping cover our overhead, helping us to get better equipment, helping us to put more time and energy into the podcast, and of course, the entire New Evangelicals community. So thank you to everyone who has given. Also, if you could give us a rating and review and share this episode, that would be a huge help. The podcast continues to grow, which is amazing. I'm so grateful for everyone who listens. And my goal is to bring you all great guests that you like. So if you have any feedback, you can email me, tim@thenewevangelicals.com. All right. Without further ado, here's my interview. All right, Janice. Well, I got to say, I appreciate you making time coming on the show. I know you're in New York City. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. I'm in Philly, so we're practically neighbors. Given the global nature of what we're involved with, I'm like, wow, someone in my own backyard. So,
practically down the street. Nice.
Yes. And who also understands good pizza. That's a big thing on my account. People don't get it. They're like, oh, I know good pizza. I'm like, listen, I don't want to be an elitist. I'm not trying to be that guy. Okay. But I don't think you know good pizza.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, pizza is just good food anyway.
Amen.
I mean, you can go wrong, but you have to work really hard at it.
Well, let me ask you a question about that, because I'm not sure how much you see stuff on my account, but there's a big debate raging around pizza, and I will brace myself for your answer. I hope it's the right one. I really do. But does pineapple belong on pizza?
You know what? If people want pineapple on their pizza, yes, it belongs there.
Okay. For the sake of this conversation, I will just say I understand. Thank you for sharing your perspective. All of my pineapple pizza lovers are probably cheering right now. So
I mean, I will say I've been a pescatarian for about 7 years now.
Oh,
so
okay.
You know, I've only got so many toppings I can go with, so I don't mind a pineapple on a pizza.
All right. Hey, I can't fault you for that. All right. Well, listen, the reason why I wanted to have you on, I've been following your account for a little while now, and I know like certain puzzle pieces to your story, but I know that your story is pretty powerful, honestly. And for the sake of our audience, I'm not sure how many of my followers follow you. Why don't you kind of give us some of your background, who you are, and kind of like how you grew up, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Okay. So I'm Janice. I am a born Californian. So born and raised in California, born and raised in church. Grew up very Pentecostal, very charismatic. So, church starts at 9. What time it's going to finish? Only God knows.
Truly.
So yeah, I grew up under that. I did grow up under a woman pastor. So, that kind of made things different for me. Anyway, so I never had the question of should women be pastors? Can women speak? That kind of thing was just never an issue for me. So yeah, I grew up in a super small church. It, just very inward focused. I think a lot of churches are.
Sure.
So just grew up there. It was looking back on it now, very legalistic. So I knew what the rules were. And then because it was such a small church, everybody knows you and everyone has an opinion.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And just very worried about, the world and me specifically, because I was and am an artist and, was a singer and into music. And so there was always that fear of, the world is going to get you. You're too worldly, you're too secular.
Yes.
And for me, especially, like, I always felt like, oh, I'm way too spiritual for the world and then way too worldly for the church.
Yeah.
But I was not worldly at all. I was literally doing nothing. And just very, very fearful of all things. And so when Hillsong first came onto the scene, all things are possible. They're really, really early stuff. My church started using it. And that was how I found out about Hillsong. And back then I was looking to see like if they did a conference or anything in the States, and they weren't at that time. But that's where I ran across the Bible college, that they had a Bible college. And at that point, I was already out of high school and had been kind of like going back and forth between go to school for a while and then get bored, and then go to work and then get bored with that and then go back to school. So I was at a phase where I was like, oh, I want to go back to school. So I'll go to Hillsong College. And so that's me from childhood to early adulthood. That was my church story. Yeah.
So it sounds like, you were never the rebellious kid. And because I was very much the same way you are. I mean, I grew up fundamentalist, so you people were way too demonic and liberal for us, because you guys spoke in tongues and you had women pastors. Like, what were you thinking? But a lot of the same ingredients of legalism, of, separation from the world, of being afraid of worldly influence drilled into my head. And I was the same way, where I was also an artist, I'm, a drummer, and I never rebelled at all, like ever. I was always kind of committed in some way to this Jesus thing. So it sounds like we have some overlap there. So, okay. So you grow up this way, you're like, hey, might as well, let's do this Hillsong College thing. Is Hillsong actually like an accredited college though at the time?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay. That's good to know. So what was that experience like for you then? Like, were you aware of that before you actually went?
Yeah. Like, I don't know that anybody, I mean, I don't, especially then. Now, maybe they're a little trickier about it.
Right.
But like, I don't think anyone was going for like accreditation. Like, you're going for the Hillsong experience. You're going because you think they're the best at, what they do. And you are planning to stay in the church. Like, you're not,
right.
You're not going into the world. Like, that's
right.
That's the whole thing.
Right.
And there is a degree program there, like basically another school that uses their campus and meets there. So it's not, 97% of the people going to Hillsong College are not doing the degree program. It's very much, oh, this will be good. This is good church credit. This is for church world. So I went because I was like, oh, like I love music.
Right.
I can only do worship music because that's
of course.
That's the way.
Safe. It's the safe thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, they're killing it. So I'm gonna go there. Originally I was like, I'm just gonna go for a year, learn whatever, and then come back and put it to use in my church here. Maybe we can bring it forward a little bit.
Yes. Totally get that.
Yeah. So then I got there, and Hillsong is such a good, I mean, it's entry level, like in so many ways. And it was such a good thing for me because it was like, oh, this is such a radically different way of doing church. And just, it seemed to be much more of a middle ground. A big thing was like, oh no, living the same, Sunday through Saturday, as opposed to, Monday through Saturday, and then Sunday is different.
Sure.
So it was, all about relevance and just being more relevant. So within a few months there, I was like, oh, like I can never go back to my old church. Like just the fast paced that it has, just the technology, just everything. It's
high
like,
production value.
Right.
And as an artist, it's like, oh, I've dreamt about playing in professional spaces, and now I'm able to do that.
Absolutely.
It's really a combination of, looking back, right? Of course, several things happening.
Yeah. So many things. And there was where I first kind of ran into how legalistic I was. Because I remember just being not necessarily bothered, but just being really aware of something. It's like, oh, like they play secular music in the lobby, like, coming in. So things like that. And I'm like, oh, like, does this bother me? Why does it bother me? Should it bother me? So
you're in my head. Get out. I totally know what you're talking about. Yes, exactly.
And so, so these now that I'm like, such stupid things, like that were so big at the time.
Yes.
And totally. And made all the difference. It's like, oh, I cannot go back.
Yeah.
So I ended up staying in Australia for like 4.5 years.
Wow.
And I knew when I knew I had to come back to the States, I was like, well, I can't be in California and not be at my old church and it, not be an issue. So like I have to be away.
Right.
Which I think actually happens a lot with churches. Like people, you can never just leave your church. Like it has to be, I'm moving, I got a new job. Like I literally physically can't be here.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm leaving.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point.
So I had met, I had a friend that I met at the Bible college and she was from New York. So the year before I moved back, I went to visit her. I was like, oh yeah, that's where I'm going to go. Like I like it there. So moved to New York. And then I moved in October and I started going to my friend's church upstate. And again, a little small family church. And like coming from Hillsong Momentum to anything else, it's like just hitting a brick wall anyway.
Yeah.
And so I was within like a month, I was like losing my mind. And in that December, so just 2 months later, the Connect group that eventually became Hillsong NYC started. So I joined that Connect group and then the rest is terrible history. But
so you were really a part of Hillsong New York at the ground level. Like you didn't come in later. You were one of like the people helping to make Hillsong happen in New York City.
Yeah.
And you also were with Hillsong for 4.5 years, which means that obviously at the time it was a good experience. You're obviously hitting your stride. You're in the culture, right? I mean, you're in it, you're breathing it, you love it. You go to your friend's church and I totally know the feeling of just like, they don't get it. This is ridiculous. Like this is so legalistic and whatever, low production value. Their sound guy sucks, whatever. Okay. So now you're like, I can almost imagine, and forgive me if I'm reading too much into this, but if I'm thinking about like you almost seeing it as like a sign, like, wow, God, what are the chances that, I picked New York and now Hillsong's planting here? Like what a God thing, quote unquote, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So now here you are, you're in New York City, you're probably feeling totally primed for this moment. And then where do we go from there?
So the Connect group started. Like I said, it was another little church first. It was a church plant, but of people who were from the college and were, the interns of Brian Houston, whatever. So it was like, okay, even in the beginning when it wasn't going to be Hillsong, it's going to be Hillsong adjacent. Like this is going to be Hillsong-esque.
Right.
So like joining that and it was their Connect group for about 2 months. Yeah. Until Vision Sunday. Hillsong is in February. And so I knew before, I was like, I bet they're going to announce the Hillsong New York and that is going to be this. And sure enough, that happened. And it was literally like day and night, like the switch that couple made from like when it was their Connect group to when it became Hillsong. It was like, to look back at it now, like it almost seems insane. I'm like, I had to have made that up. Like nobody could change that fast, but they did. And like immediately just the hierarchies and just the power plays and all of that were just happening. And
can I ask a question about that? Sorry, just so I understand. So you're saying this connect group, the leaders of that group, their personalities changed quickly once it was announced that, oh, we're going to be pastors of Hillsong. Is that kind of what was happening?
I mean, that's what they assumed. Like they didn't end up being they ended up being on the team,
right?
But they weren't the leaders.
Okay.
But I think it was just, it's just like, it's very different when you are planting your own church and like you have to be nice to people because who's going to come to this? But once you know it's a Hillsong and it's guaranteed, like people are going to want to be a part of this. And so the game with Hillsong from the beginning until now is that it's bad and you know it's bad and you're having a bad time, but there's somebody else coming any minute now and it's going to change. Like, or you just got to stick with it a little longer. You're being tested. It's going to change. And so like with them, when they made their switch and they started being awful, it was like, well, they're not going to be the leaders. Like, we don't know. We didn't initially know who was coming to lead this, but it's not going to be them. So it's going to be fine. Like, we're going to wait. We're going to wait for the leaders to come. And then once it was announced that Carl Lentz was it, when he came, I was a stage manager, so I would see him all the time. So I'm one of the people that he just saw all the time.
Right.
So I think we just got used to each other. So it was, I mean, Hillsong is abusive. It just is. That's just the way it's set up. But for me specifically, like I had this connection with Carl Lentz. So that was just kind of my safety zone. Like things could happen to me, people could be, however, but only to a certain extent because he did like me. We were buddies. So, I got away with a lot. And I felt like, oh, okay, I'm in this place. I have this relationship with him.
Right.
Stuff is bad, but it must be like part of my purpose is to, use my influence, be here, make things better for the people who are, under me, the people that I'm leading, take care of them, and then do what I can to talk to him about whatever's going on.
When you say things, were bad, like in what context are we talking about? People just not nice? We're talking about just like, what kind of things are we talking about here?
It's just, I mean, the whole system is set up on volunteers. And so that's always like, now I look at it and I'm like, I think in churches, everybody should be getting paid or nobody should. Like, as soon as you have money involved and you're valuing certain people's time and not other people's, like it just gets messy. And I was just talking with a friend the other day and I was like, the problem with Hillsong, like the great thing and the terrible thing, it's really not the leaders, it's the people in the middle. So it's like, there are some people who are having okay experiences. Like, my people on my stage managing team, they were having an okay time because I was a good leader. The people in my Connect group, they were having a good time because I was taking care of them. But then there are a lot of other people kind of in that middle management who are wanting to be on top and who are just awful. And some people, like a lot of people, nobody means to be awful, I don't think. Right. But you shouldn't have this much power. Like you shouldn't have this much authority over other people, with literally no training. Like we're put in these positions, even me, just based on who likes you. Like it's not about any actual skill or, knowledge. It's lucky if you have it and if you are, a decent leader. But for the most part, it's very much, it's a popularity contest.
I do struggle more than ever with what you just said about, the paid thing, the volunteer thing. I was a volunteer at a church for 6 years and I did it willingly. I never felt pressured, honestly. I love to play, right? And as a drummer, being able to play in pro space is like, okay, maybe I'm not getting paid, but hey, it's a full house every Sunday. Like I could go back to bars playing with wedges, like nah. But as I've thought about it more, and I realized like the level that some of these churches demand out of their volunteers, level of practice and time and just energy, right? Even if we like it, I do wrestle with that compensation part, especially financially, when you're taking away time from your family and your other job. So so where were you as far as like your theology, like your, I guess, deconstruction, if we can use that term? When did you start kind of like having those little cracks in the dam? You know what I'm talking about? Where it's like, oh, that's a little crack, but I can ignore it for now. Like when did some of those things in your mind, you started picking up on these things maybe for the first time? And how did that kind of grow over time?
I mean, looking back at it now, the cracks were always there. Like they were just
totally
right. Questions and things, but like, that doesn't really matter.
Right.
And,
right. Not important.
Yeah. The major things, cracks started showing probably around, no, actually it was earlier. Like I always think it was later, but I was looking at the emails not too long ago, and I think it was 2012. So like the Connect group started officially in 2010, and then in 2011 we started like regular services.
Okay.
So in 2012, I remember we would have the Wednesday night exchange services, and this guy came from, he had just arrived from Hillsong College. He was from Virginia Beach, so I think he knew Carl before, but he had just arrived and he was up there emceeing like a service already. And it was terrible. Like, and he, cookie cutter white boy, looks like Carl, talks like Carl, like a clone. And it was like, it just hit me. I was like, why does he get to be bad at this? Like there are other people who have been here who, who could do, any one of us could do this if this is the level, you have to be at. So that was like my first, let me man up and write this email.
Okay.
So that was my first kind of foray into that with Carl. And like legit like fear and trembling. And I was like, I don't know how he's going to react to this. I don't know what he's going to say, but I'm going to say something. And so, I was like, hey, if we've got openings on the roster, can we consider like some women or some people of color? Like I'm not even going to suggest a woman of color at this point. Like, can we just get like,
well, let's not get crazy. Let's not get too radical,
one or the other. And so he wrote back, he was like, I would love that. So let's pray for like God to send that person. And again, like I said, fear and trembling.
Sure.
All right, I don't want to go too far. So I'm like, okay,
totally
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. At least he's, open to it.
Right.
But
I wasn't fired, so I guess that's a plus,
Right. But in the back of my head, and then I saw, and I had like, forwarded the email to someone else. I'm like, can you believe this? Like, look, seriously, wait for God to send? Like,
right. They're here. Like they're right here.
We're here.
Right.
But then at the same time, like always with all of this, the programming is fantastic and it's so effective. So it's like, as soon as we're going to pray for God to send. Well, wait a minute. I'm here. I feel like I could do that. Hang on. Nope. Now I've got to back up, because who do I think I am?
Yes.
What kind of pride is that?
Yes.
Wow. That's probably why I'm not up there. Because I think I can be. Like,
wow.
So I've got to.
Yes.
I got to work on myself. Like,
yes.
This can't be about me. So all of these things, like when these cracks will start showing, I would say something, but then would immediately like turn it back on myself and be like, okay, what am I supposed to learn here? What is this teaching me? What am I doing wrong? Where am I, where am I out of line?
And what makes that so difficult to see is that there's a hint of truth to that idea of like self-reflection and wanting to be better and not making things about you. Like there is truth to that concept, right? But it's taken to such an extreme and used in a way that it turns out a lot of white men don't have to worry about that. Let's just call it what it is, right? Like Carl and his buddies probably aren't thinking about that. You know, right. Carl's probably thinking, this is my role. I have the power to do this. Right. So it is a very, what could be healthy idea, twisted and perverted and aimed at certain people to keep them kind of in their place in a way, right? With God language. So it's quite a maze of mental, it's like a mental fortress that is built in your head. And every avenue you turn, it comes back to you. You're like, wait, I can't get out of this, right?
Right.
So I can imagine that being very difficult.
Right. Yeah. So, so for the next few years, I mean, from then until I left, like it would just be me and Carl going back and forth with these different conversations. So it was about women. It was about race. It was about single women. Like I've forgotten that so many of our first conversations are like, can you stop making jokes about single people? Like you don't need it. It's not helpful. And you're not doing anything for us. Like,
right.
Right. So yeah, just like just these marginalized groups, like you're othering people. Why can't, it's important. People need to see themselves. They need to, know this place is for them. Can we just diversify this?
Right. Which is very, it's interesting you say this because I've been on my own journey of decolonizing myself as best as I can. I'm still so much to learn, right? Like I feel like for the first time I have glasses where I can start seeing shapes. I'm like, okay, I'm not totally blind, but got a long way to go. Yeah. But I am realizing more and more for the first time in my entire life how unspoken the rule in many evangelical spaces that are white is that yes, you're welcome here as long as you assimilate into our culture, right? As opposed to, hey, you're welcome here. What can we learn from you? Right. And also what can you learn from us? And how can we give and take and just have this beautiful dialogue, right? And how do we say, great point about single women in the church. We shouldn't make jokes at their expense, right? Instead of, oh, well, toughen up. Oh, it's not a big deal. And it is, to someone who's steeped in that culture, me, it was hard for me to understand, right? It took a lot of listening and it will take a lot more listening. But now that I'm seeing it, I can't unsee it. It's like, oh my God, you're so right. It's so narrow who it serves. And who it primarily serves is the white family with 2 kids, a mom and a dad everything is great. And dad has a great corporate job. And the young adults group is aimed at getting kids to get married as soon as possible. It's like, that is the funnel. And if you don't, we secretly think if you're like 30 and older, something's wrong with you if you're single. Absolutely, like, oh, what's the deep hidden sin in their life? Right. And that's just not very healthy. But it's so normalized. Like it's just, anyway, go on. I don't want to take over here, but I'm listening.
No, but like even what you said, like about assimilation, like I have, like I say it jokingly, but like it's not really a joke. I'm like, when when a Black woman like stops straightening her hair, like she might not know it, but like she's deconstructing. Like that's a sign. And that was like one of the, I think it was maybe 2013, 2014, like when I did the big chop, and I was like, I'm not going to straighten my hair anymore. And at the time, like it had nothing to do with church, but it's just like, oh, like I just want to be more whatever I actually am. Right.
Who you were created to be, this beautiful human.
Right. And so,
okay.
Yeah. And so it got to the point where I was just so frustrated. I'm like, this is not changing.
And you have the ear of Carl, and you have the ear of the pastor. So clearly, like, this is not like an up the chain thing. You have the direct ear of this guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it. And so, and he, at the same time, he was becoming, known for being the Black Lives Matter guy. Like he'll say it. And so it was so frustrating. It's like, you're saying it, but like your staff demographics are not changing at all. And we're having these conversations, and you just keep playing the game. Like now a lot of the work that I do in, trying to burn Hillsong down is just kind of like my penance, because I'm like, I was so complicit in so many ways, but also specifically, as far as race, I feel like I taught them to trick the system in a lot of ways, just make it look better. But nothing's actually changing. And so it got to the point where we're having these conversations and he's not changing. I'm so frustrated. But then again, like, I have to go back and be like, okay,
right.
Who am I to say this? Am I right here? Like, maybe I am. Leader.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe I care about this. Carl Lentz doesn't. Hillsong as an institution doesn't. Maybe God doesn't. Like, maybe I am out of line here. So then I had to kind of go with that. And then it got to the point where I was like, well, it matters. But ultimately, if I'm wrong and God doesn't care about this, then what am I doing? Because what kind of God is this? And ultimately I was like, well, I don't think God is like that. I mean, because it's just wild to think, God would create this vast array of humanity, but every time he wants a pastor, like, he just reaches into this one bucket, like
the white cookie jar.
Right. Like, he's like, that's just where I go for pastors.
Right. Sorry, that's my pastor bucket.
Sorry, that's just what it is. So, like,
right.
I can believe that. But if that's true, then this is not for me. But if it's not true, and I don't think it is true, then Hillsong is not for me. And like, this place is not healthy for me. Like, you can't be in a place like this being told that, no, we are the voice of God. We are doing, and especially because it was never, no, I just don't want to stop hiring my friends. Like, this is what I'm comfortable with. No, like this, we just promote who God tells us. We put people on the staff. It's God's will, so if that's true, like, that says awful things about God. So I can't be here anymore.
Well, and here's where like that like brainwashing technique really comes in, right? Because what happens is you leave the church, and then what do they say? Oh, don't give up on God because the church hurt you, right? Like, but the thing is, and you and I both know this, because we grew up in church. The reality is, the church claims to speak on behalf of God, right? Yeah. God told me, we prayed on it, and God led us in this direction. So it's not a separation, right? It is one in the same, because they taught us that God speaks to the church. So if the church you're a part of is excluding Black lives from leadership and from having a real seat of change at the table, right? What that tells people, even if we don't see it consciously, we learn it subconsciously, that, oh, well, God must not really care about this then, because the church puts itself in the place of authority and it claims to speak. We are the people of God. We're the bride of Christ. You know all the language. I'm probably triggering half the audience right now. I'll put a trigger warning on this episode. But that's the reality. And so, but then when you get hurt, well, don't that's just a few bad people in church. That's not the church. That's not God. You can't do that. You can't pull that all of a sudden out from underneath of us and say, we never meant it. Because we know that you did when it came to controlling us, when it came to how we lived our lives, what words we said, who we hired, our hierarchy. It mattered then, so it matters now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, because I was friends with Carl.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, the dissonance is just everywhere. Like, what flavor do you want? Like, we've got it. Yeah. And so, on one hand, it's, we're besties and I love you and you're great and you're a wonderful leader and all these things.
Yeah.
And then, I'm writing the church emails, and I'm writing the church connect group studies, that they're using across all the campuses. I'm ghostwriting for one of the pastors. Like, so I'm here. My voice is all throughout this place. I'm fine enough to do that stuff. Like, I'm doing real work.
Right.
But I can't there's something wrong with me
Mm.
where I cannot be on the platform. Like I can't go beyond this.
Well, it's almost like they're saying your mental capacity is great, you're creative and great, but your Black body isn't.
Right.
That, honestly, I hate to say it that way, but like that's what it seems like, right? Like you can ghostwrite, you can write all the content, but we can't have you seen on stage, essentially, is what it sounds like. It's like, what? Like, stop extracting me then. Like, stop extracting my resources. Piss off.
Right, but they'll never say no, it's because you're Black.
Right.
And so even I wouldn't say that. So I'd be like, okay.
Right.
So what is the secret sin?
Right.
What am I?
Right. What don't I know?
What am I doing? Right. Because again, like, nobody's perfect, obviously, but I'm like literally doing nothing.
Right.
Like I'm doing nothing.
Right.
And
right.
And so now a lot of, present day, a lot of my anger and stuff I'm dealing was like, oh my God, like I was just robbed of so much.
Yeah.
Like they're literally stealing lives. Like just taking experiences from people, just taking, and without remorse. Like, because they're married and doing things outside of it. Like, you guys are living wild.
Yeah.
And and you are lording it over people who are doing nothing, like doing their best.
Yeah.
And depriving themselves. And you still, like, you don't care.
Right. So what was the breaking point for you, right? Because you're here, you're with Hillsong for quite a few years. You're Carl, you have his ear, trying to get things changed, trying to help him out. You're writing for him, all this stuff. What was the moment where you're like, I just gotta go. Like, this is just unacceptable.
There were a few moments like that. Like, I don't know that anyone ever just one day like leaves church. Like, right. I think
true.
It's like a breakup. Like, it takes a few tries.
I know.
And so, the election, the 2016 election was, a huge breaking point. Before that summer, with Alton Sterling and Philando Castile, like that 1 week. And there were times when like things would happen and I was like, oh, I can't go to church because I was writing the studies. Like, I needed to know, I knew who was going to be preaching where, so I could know like where I needed to go. So I would know when Carl was going to be there and when he wasn't. And when something racial would happen, like if Carl's not there, I cannot go because these other pastors, they're going to say something crazy. Like, it's just not, it is not a safe space.
Right.
And so, like, several of those. So then I'd be taking weeks off. So there were times when, I'm not going back. So I'd be out for a month or two. But then I would miss it. So I would go back.
Totally.
And then, in 2017, we had been talking about Black History, doing Black History Month stuff forever. So finally, that was the first time in the last week of Black History Month, Carl calls me a few days, oh, can you do something? So I did this spoken word piece. And then like 2 weeks later, I like left the church. Wow. And I was just taking a break. I was like, oh, I just need a break. But that time I just didn't miss it. And so I didn't go back again until Mother's Day because a friend of mine, let the women speak on Mother's Day. So a friend of mine was speaking. So I went back and I was like, oh, yeah, I don't want to come back. So that was when I was like, okay, I'm leaving. But I didn't want to go quietly. I was like, no, I'm going to talk to Carl. Like, I'm going to tell him why. Like, you're not going to be able to say, no, we never knew. Like, nobody ever said anything.
Right.
Because people don't say anything. Like, people would just quietly leave.
They just sneak out.
Right. So I was like, no, I'm going to talk to him. And he would not meet with me. Like, he just wouldn't. And like, he knew it was coming. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this over text. Like, can we meet? Yeah, he just wouldn't meet with me. So it took until July. And I had a cat that I'd had for 16 years. And he died And so I was like, well, Carl knows, I'm having a bad time. So he's not going to be too shitty to me.
Right.
So I'm going to use this and I'm going to go on and just hand in my resignation from my non-paying jobs.
Oh, so you weren't getting paid for any of this either?
Oh, absolutely not. No.
Okay, so let's pause for one sec. That's a big thing that I think our listeners need to hear. So you're ghostwriting for other teachers or pastors, whatever it is. You're doing all kinds of you're doing real work like that. This is not just you show up for a rehearsal on Thursday and you gig out on Sunday morning for a couple hours. You're putting how many hours a week on average do you think realistically you're putting into this?
I mean, it was definitely a part-time job.
20 hours?
Yeah, easy.
Okay. I mean,
easy. And that's just, like the ghostwriting and, you were there all day on Sunday when I was stage managing.
Oh, yeah.
All day. Monday, I would write the study, listen to the sermons, write the study. Right. Tuesday, we have Connect group. Wednesday, exchange. Thursday, creative night.
Oh my God. Okay. So you're doing your thing. You are in this 20 plus hours a week. And listen, I mean, it adds up quick. At my old church, when we had 3 services, it was a 7 a.m. call time, 7:15. I got home at like 1:30, and that's not including a rehearsal on Thursday. I mean, there's already 10 hours just in 2 events. So, okay. So you're doing all this, not getting paid. And Carl, who is telling you, I'm assuming he said things like, I'm grateful to have you. You're a good friend. I'm sure you had some kind of friendship with him, right? All of a sudden now, when like there's a problem and he's going to be confronted, sounds like he's kind of cowering a little bit and like, actually, no, our friendship now isn't worth what I might have told you it was worth. Because I mean, let's face it, I've had difficult conversations with friends. I'm sure you have too. And you get through them. That's what friends do, right? Like you work through the hard moments that you hurt someone. That's what you do. And all of a sudden, Carl is like, and this whole friend thing, this whole I love you thing, I'm still your leader. I'm still a pastor, right? Okay. Right. And now here we are back in the story. So your cat tragically passes away. You kind of leverage that to say, hey, this will be an opportunity to have Carl meet with me. You're going to hand in your resignation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So at that point, I knew he wasn't going to meet with me. So I just resigned.
Okay. You just resigned. Gotcha.
And so he was like, you're not going to find what you're looking for. We're doing better than anyone else on all this race stuff. You're not going to find what you're looking for and you'll be back.
He said that to you?
Yeah. Yeah. So that was his thing. And like, honestly, I didn't know for sure that he was wrong. Like totally. Especially when you were in Hillsong, it is so all encompassing. Like you really do lose sight of the rest of the world. Like it's Hillsong. What could be better than this?
Right.
Like, it's the biggest, it's the best.
Right.
I have no idea what's out there. I really don't.
Right.
So I mean, I don't think I'll be back, but who knows? And I remember telling him, because he was like, oh, you're wrong. You're making a mistake. And I was like, well, I mean, if I am, then I guess I'll come back and you'll have to forgive me. Like that's, that's how it works.
What a response for a pastor, for a shepherd, right? To be like, you'll come back.
You'll come back.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll let the audience sit with that. They can fill in the blanks where I would usually say there. So continue on.
So I left and I found there was another little church plant starting here in Harlem.
Okay.
And it was a Black pastor. Just from the outset, they were much better about having a diverse platform, having women speaking, like all the things. I was like, okay, I'll do this. So I joined there, and it was fine. About a year and a half. I was on the worship team there. Me and a friend of mine were co-leading it for a while, and it was never going to be a permanent thing. It's like we're just waiting for somebody to come in. So after a few months of us doing that, someone did come in.
Okay.
She and her sister, they took over the team, and then they set up these one-on-one meetings. They wanted to, get to know everyone on the team.
Sure.
And long story short, like they basically like hit us all with like the clobber scriptures, and we're like, hey, this is what we believe about homosexuality. Do you agree or do you not agree? And there were like several gay people on the team.
Oh my
the pastor had known. Like I find, especially these days, like when people are coming into church, people are like honest about who they are and they want to know.
Right.
Like, hey, this is who I am.
Right.
Is that okay? What can I do?
Right.
And so it was no secret, you know, it wasn't a secret. So when they asked me, you know, I'm like, look, again, I'm not doing anything. Like I can sit here and, you know, agree with whatever.
Right.
But personally, you know, by that point, I don't believe homosexuality is wrong.
Right.
Like I don't have an issue with it.
Right.
And you know, what is your stance ultimately here? Because I mean, you know, do you think, is it the action? Is it just being gay? Like where are you guys drawing these lines?
Right.
Like what are you trying to find out here?
Right.
And so like they, you know, it's just the word. Like we just believe what the word says. Yeah. It's just the word. So either you agree or you don't agree. And if you don't agree, well then we're gonna have to put you on probation and you're gonna have to, you know, speak to the associate pastor and whatever. You can put me on probation all day long. I was like, I was raised with that. Like I've come to this, so I'm not going back. Like,
right. Totally.
You know.
Totally.
And so I mean they ended up just burning like half the team. Wow. So like 6 people, myself included, like left the team and then ultimately left the church because it was just handled so badly. Like the pastor just, I don't know, it was just basically like, well, I mean, I put them in authority, so we just kind of have to respect that. So yeah, so something about that just broke something in me. I was like, what are we doing? Like, I don't, he's a good preacher, but at this point I was like, I don't think I need to sit and listen to someone's thought of the week on the Bible.
I mean, how many more can we hear for the first time? Honestly, like you name it, I've heard a sermon on it, guaranteed. You know? Right.
Yeah. So me leaving church at that point, like it was just really practical for me. I was like, I don't think I need this anymore. Like, and I'm tired of just paying into these things, giving time and money to these things that don't care about me, don't care about my friends, like, I don't want to go anymore. And so then I think people unwittingly kind of push me even further into deconstruction, because then like people get so worried when you leave church.
Oh my God, like, so worried.
They get so worried that then it's like, well, hey, maybe I will just entertain some of these other questions.
Right.
I'm out here anyway. You guys are afraid for me anyway.
Right.
So let me
keep going.
Let me just keep going. And especially, you know, when you're hell is gonna get you. Like,
right.
All right, well, do I actually even believe in hell?
Yep.
Do I need that?
Yep.
And then for me, like once hell was gone, like it was, oh, okay, now I can really see this clearly and like what works here, what doesn't work.
Yeah.
Is this good?
Yeah.
It's not good for me because I have lived up to these standards to the best of my ability and beyond, honestly.
Yeah.
And I'm not healthy. Like I am not well. I have done everything that was supposed to bring life to me. And I'm dead inside.
Man, in that regard, you and I are very similar. I got to that same point where it's like, I did everything by right, you know, like everything. I mean, everything, you know, I never did anything wrong in the grand scheme of like the big sins in
the
church,
big one,
right?
Yeah.
And I'm at the time I was like 28, 29, having panic attacks for the first time in my life. And I'm like, what is going on with me? You know, and it's still taking time to undo. And in a lot of ways, I'm not nearly as moral anymore. You know, like I say, fuck now, you know, and I don't say I'm sorry about that or whatever else it is, you know? And I'm like, but I just feel so much clearer and so much more grounded, which is counterintuitive to how I've been taught to see things.
Right.
And certainly, you know, there's especially in the, there's this idea of wisdom that the Bible talks about, and we want to be wise in our decisions, of course, don't want to go about just ruining ourselves. But again, it's the same kind of idea where yes, there is some truth to being wise in your choices with a lot of lies of like, here's the right and wrong, instead of like you being able to make these calls and kind of learn from the mistakes or good choices that you make. Right. Wow. Yeah. So it's very interesting because I really resonate a lot with what you're saying, especially with that like golden child kind of approach, and it's still not being enough. Like it still wasn't enough. I was asked to step down from my church once I started New Evangelicals. They said, hey, either stop your social media account or stop drumming here. I'm like, guys, I am reading my Bible every damn day. I'm in theology podcasts every day. I'm talking about this like it's my whole life. I'm obsessed with theology. Isn't that what you wanted me to do? And now you're telling me, sorry, you're not doing it right, so you got to leave. Like, it can be so aggravating, right?
Yeah.
So where are you now with this Jesus thing? Because frankly, before you answer, I'll just say where I'm at. I'll put my cards on the table. I am more interested and intrigued with the way of Jesus more than ever, but I'm also more aware than ever that the Jesus I was taught was a whitewashed Americanized version. And so I'm kind of on this like hunt to try and discover like the Jesus that we at least see in scripture and like all of the weird nuances that fit no Western American categories. So I'm still very much committed to Jesus. I do affirm a physical resurrection personally. I believe in that. I believe in this hope, even though it might sound crazy to some people, but I'm aware more than ever that like what I was inherited was more Republican and conservative than it is actually Jesus centered. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at. Your turn.
Where am I? Like Jesus was the hardest thing to kind of let go of. And ultimately, and again, it all goes back to hell. So for me, I'm like, well, do I believe in Jesus? Yeah. I don't know. And I don't really care anymore because for me and my theology, everything with me is just very math to me. I'm like, if you just make it make sense, like tell me anything, but then I'm going to put it together with the other stuff. So for me, like with salvation, all right, if God is all powerful, all knowing, all loving, and if good is stronger than evil, well, I didn't have to do anything to fall into sin. Like Adam and Eve did that for everyone. So if the story of Jesus is real, then salvation should be for everyone. Like it should cover everyone. Like it shouldn't matter what I believe about it, because it didn't matter what I believed about that.
Yes.
So like, do I believe in Jesus? I don't. Some days yes, some days no, but
yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Whatever day it is, like it doesn't matter, because if it's true, then it's true, and it should be good for everyone.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what I do with all of it. Like I ultimately want to believe, God is all powerful, all knowing, and all loving. So for me and my theology, that also means that God can't be involved here. I'm like, because if God is picking and choosing, things to do, then that's not fair. So take God away. God is out there somewhere, but we're here. So this is our responsibility.
Yep.
This is on us to be as loving, as knowing, as powerful, as we can to do the right things. Yeah. And so since becoming, whatever I am, I'm like, I think I'm a much better person. Like I care about the earth. I care about other people and, my impact and what I'm doing and how much that matters.
Yeah.
So, one of the big taglines for Christianity is like, without the Bible, people wouldn't know what to do. We don't have any morality outside of it. I'm like, it's not true. I think Christianity dumbs it down for a lot of people. And I don't know, I just believe in humanity more than I ever did.
Yeah.
Like the world is awful, but I have so much more hope now.
Yeah.
I'm like, I believe people are basically good. We're not intrinsically evil. We're not, depraved. Like, no, I think we're all inherently seeking safety, seeking love. And sometimes we go about it the wrong way, but Like people are good and people want to do good. So the story of Jesus, I think it's amazing. And I think we'd all be much better if we just took the story of Jesus and just that. Like, I think a lot of Christians are way more Paul, than Jesus.
Yeah.
But if we were just doing what Jesus did, the world would just be much, much different. The United States would be much, much different.
Yeah, I think that's good. One of the things that shifted my perspective forever, like permanently, was when I was listening to some person that I really like, and they made the point that in the story of the Bible as a whole, God primarily uses or works through people to make the world a better place. And I was like, oh my God, like, yes, like it's not some magic hand from the sky down. Like, it's people. Like, people are responsible for what's happening down here. And we have to take that responsibility and own it. And somehow in American Christianity, specifically evangelicalism, we were taught that, like, to be a good Christian is to pray a prayer and then, like, not curse and have, like, there's no perspective that's bigger than, like, your individual morality, right? The idea of systemic injustice doesn't really exist, as we well know. The idea of systemic oppression or systems of economic power that keep people oppressed don't exist. But when you think about it, like, they really should in the Christian mind. Like, guys, this is like, I mean, Jesus himself literally said he came to liberate the oppressed and that he's good news for the poor. That's pretty dang direct. But again, in our theology that I was taught and you were taught, it's like, well, some people do that. That's nice. But really, have you prayed the prayer yet? Have you prayed the prayer? It's like, I don't even know if, like, that's even a thing. Like, is that a thing? You know, like, it's not in this Bible you talk about all the time. So
and it's crazy. Like, it's, all the support for Trump, and with Trump, he prayed the prayer. He's a Christian, and it's like, what is this religion? Because I'm over here doing everything, not doing everything.
Yep.
But I leave church and my soul is in mortal danger.
Totally.
Like, you are going to hell. But this guy is okay because he prayed the prayer. I don't understand this.
Right.
Like, and just this idea of, I don't know, like God, your God needing someone like that.
Right.
Like, I'm like, how are you not offended just as a regular Christian? Like, God could choose anyone.
Right.
He reached past everybody.
Right.
Who was serving faithfully.
Right.
It was like, this guy.
Right. He gets
this
it.
Guy. That's wild.
No, I never thought about it like that, but that's honestly such a great point of, like, if God is choosing and in control, he could have picked, literally, there's like 7 billion more qualified people on the planet to do what he's doing. And yet we have Trump, and this is like, we're supposed to bow down and kiss the feet. Right. It is. Anyway, I'm sure you already know about how much I don't like Trump or Christian nationalism. So we won't go into that because we'll be here for another 3 hours of me just mostly ranting and you interviewing me at this point, which is not the point of the podcast. So listen, it was honestly great getting you on. It was great hearing your story. I appreciate making time because this is, I think for a lot of people in the audience, like, this is part of the healing process, is that we have to hear these stories that people probably never heard before, but people that were behind the scenes of some pretty big things, and that saw behind the curtain of systems that like to present themselves as flawless and God-centered and so loving, but behind the scenes aren't maybe even aware of their own, exclusivity, and don't want to be aware of it either. It's not even like they want to. They prefer to stay ignorant, right? So I appreciate you sharing that story. I know it's personal and it means a lot. So thank you.
Thanks for having me. I've given you the the easy version at this point. Like, as you know, like, there are levels to deconstruction, and there's like stuff I can't even think about, yet. Totally. But I don't know. I would not wish deconstruction on anyone, but I wish it for everyone.
Yes.
Like, it's awful and wonderful all the time.
And it's, in a lot of ways, it's like taking that little red pill, that little matrix pill. It's like, did I really want this? Well, I did, and I'm here. So
Yeah. And it's not like the guy who wants the steak dinner. It's like, no, I never want to go back.
Right. Yeah, that's honestly true. And the farther I'm out of evangelical circles, the less I want to be a part of one in the traditional American, Trump rah-rah way. Doesn't mean I'm not open to a community of some sort. Maybe one day my wife and I, who knows, right? But like, as far as the current system, like what we're known for, our big events, and don't get me wrong, I miss it. Like I miss playing in front of a packed house with a great in-ear mix, and a great live stream. I miss that part of it for sure. Like I'm not going to lie about that. I miss it, but that juice ain't worth the squeeze anymore. It just isn't. So it is what it is. Well, again, thanks for coming on. I'm sure in the future we'll do it again, or maybe we'll go Instagram live and we'll talk more. So thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tim.